I didn't think anything could surprise me after 2 deployments. But nothing prepares you for coming home to a place that doesn't feel like yours anymore. And I don't mean emotionally, I mean literally. The grass was trimmed, the porch light was replaced, and someone had the nerve to put a brand new welcome mat in front of my door. A cheerful little thing that said, "Bless this home," which was funny, because unless blessings suddenly included breaking and entering, this wasn't anyone's home but mine. I remember standing there, halfway between laughing and cussing, because the last time I saw that yard, the weeds were tall enough they could have enlisted on their own. And now the hedges were manicured like the cover of some HOA magazine. For a moment I thought maybe my wife had surprised me, until I saw the red crossover parked in the driveway. Sleek, polished like someone who owned the whole neighborhood had just pulled up and made themselves comfortable. Then came the wind chimes. That's what really broke me. My wife hates wind chimes, says they sound like ghosts who never learned rhythm. But there they were, clinking on my porch like they paid rent. I was halfway up the steps when I saw movement in the window. A guy, mid-30s, sun-bleached hair, loose shirt, holding what looked like some kind of protein smoothie, wandering across my hallway like he'd misplaced his yoga mat. And I swear in that second, something in my chest got cold. Not panic, not rage. Just calculation, the kind your brain slips into after years of learning that hesitation can get you killed. He opened the door before I could knock. "Hey, man. Can I help you? Help me." At my door. I told him this was my house, and he stared at me like I was the one trespassing. Then he introduced himself. "I'm Tyler, the tenant." Tenant. That word hit harder than anything I'd heard overseas. I pulled out my key, one I'd carried through sandstorms, airports, convoys, and it didn't even fit anymore. They'd changed the lock. On me. He told me to talk to the HOA, and I'll be honest with you. HOAs never scared me before. Annoyed me? Sure, but scared? No. Then the security SUV rolled up, all official looking but with the kind of authority you buy in bulk on Amazon. 2 guys stepped out wearing matching polos and vests they probably only ever used to carry granola bars. "Sir, we need you off the property," one said. Voice flat like he practiced it on his cat. "This is my home," I repeated. "Not according to our documents." And I knew who was coming next before I even saw her. You can smell certain personalities in the air. The scent of overconfidence mixed with too much perfume. And there she was. Clipboard tucked to her chest. Visor pulled tight. Smile sharp enough to cut wire fencing. Her name was Pamela Thorne, but the neighborhood just called her Pam. If you handed a storm cloud a latte and gave it a Facebook group, that was her. "You're early," she said, like I'd shown up to a dentist appointment 2 months ahead of schedule. I wasn't scheduled, I told her. I was deployed. She nodded like she'd expected that excuse. Under Bylaw 22B, homes left unattended for more than 90 days without active maintenance may be reassigned for community stability. We placed a temporary tenant just to keep the house contributing. Nothing personal. "Did you get my deployment notice?" I asked. She paused, only for half a breath, but I caught it. "It must have been misfiled," she said. "Feel free to bring it to the next HOA meeting. Until then, you'll need to leave before this escalates." Escalates. That word always tells you more about a person than they realize. Behind her, the tenant raised his smoothie at me in what he probably thought was a polite gesture. I turned around and walked to my rental car, not defeated, just quiet. And thinking, when you've been in situations where hesitation costs lives, you learn to recognize your own limits. And I'd hit one. I texted one word, "Set." The reply came 2 seconds later. Always, I wasn't calling for sympathy. I was calling for backup. That night in the motel, the carpet smelled like wet cardboard and old secrets. My son slept under a pile of blankets trying to disappear from the world. My wife kept staring at the ceiling like she was looking for answers between the cracks. And I sat at the little table reading through HOA bylaws like they were enemy intel. It didn't take long to find the bombshell. Bylaw 22B, this magical rule Pam used to reassign my home, had been added after I deployed. Backdated, forged signatures. A note in the margin written in her handwriting. Use this to resolve the Briar Ridge issue. I was the issue. The next afternoon, I stepped outside for air and spotted one of the HOA guards leaning against his truck, laughing on the phone. He didn't notice me until I was a couple feet away. "Dude freaked out yesterday," he said into the phone. "Thought he could just walk back in like he never left." Pam said he checked out of this neighborhood long before he packed his bags. He froze when he saw me. His face paled. "Hey, you following me?" "No," I said quietly. "Just making sure you tell Pam if she's going to quote me, she should say it to my face next time." That shook him. We drove by the house that evening. We didn't stop, but my son pressed his face against the window when we slowed down. His room, his safe place, was painted a different color. His posters were gone. A tiny dog bed sat where his telescope used to be, dead. "Is it still ours?" And for the first time since returning home, I didn't have an answer. Back at the motel, my wife sat across from me while I stared at the laptop again. She touched my hand gently. "What do we do now?" I took a slow breath, the kind you take before stepping into a hot zone. "We build a case," I said. And then, I called the team. She didn't panic. Didn't argue. She just nodded, took a sip of cold motel coffee, and said, "Then they'll need a place to stage." She knew me well. She also knew I wasn't calling soldiers. I was calling brothers. The next morning I sent out the message. By sunset they came. Not with weapons or gear or bravado. Just quiet determination and backpacks. These were men who had seen life and death up close and didn't scare easily. Especially not by a woman with a clipboard. I rented a shuttered vape shop across from the neighborhood. A makeshift war room with peeling paint and a "we're hiring" sign that hadn't been true in years. Yates rolled out maps. Bowen set up routers. Davis unloaded gear that looked half legal, half military nostalgia. Ramos walked in, cracked his knuckles, and asked, "All right, Elijah, where's the fight?" "You're standing on it," I told him. We divided roles, 2-man teams, nothing fancy, nothing aggressive. Everything filmed. Everything legal. We weren't here to throw punches. We were here to expose truth. But there was one rule everyone understood without me saying. We do this clean, or we don't do it at all. Halfway through briefing, my phone rang. "Unknown number," I answered. "You're trespassing," a woman's voice said, calm, confident. "Pam." "You're bluffing," I replied. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, chuckling, "I don't bluff. I build cases. And I just spoke with Judge Alvarez, old friend of mine. He's signing an emergency injunction first thing tomorrow. Your little army's about to commit a felony." She hung up. I looked at my team. "They know," I said quietly. Ramos cracked a smile. "Good," he replied. "Let her think she's winning. Makes the fall louder." Ramos saying that actually calmed me down a little. Which is the dumbest thing when you think about it. Standing in a dead vape shop. Planning a counterattack on a suburban HOA like it's a hostile village. But that's what it felt like. Different battlefield. You meet playbook, know your enemy, know the terrain. Own the narrative. We moved at first light, not sneaking around. Not lurking, just walking down that street like we belonged there because we did. Cameras clipped to shirts. Phones set to record. Everything backed up to cloud drives Bowen had triple encrypted. We weren't 5 steps into the cul-de-sac before the first sheriff's cruiser rolled in slow. No lights, no siren, like a cat pretending it's not hunting. A second car followed. Unmarked but official enough if you know what to look for. The sheriff stepped out, a man who'd clearly had a long career of listening to people lie to his face. He scanned us, 6 guys, military age, calm, focused, not fidgeting, not reaching for anything. "You boys want to tell me why you're assembling outside a residence at dawn?" He asked, like he already knew the complaint form number. I lifted my hands just a little, palms open. "We're here to reclaim my home legally. I've got the deed service orders and your HOA president on video committing fraud." Right on cue, Pam's SUV slid up to the curb. She got out like this was a ribbon-cutting ceremony, thermos in hand, lipstick perfect, smile tight. "Sheriff, these men are harassing my tenants," she said. "He doesn't live here anymore. We reassigned the property months ago under emergency bylaw. 22B, I finished for her. The one you added after I deployed. The one you backdated and signed at a meeting that never happened. We have the minutes, Pam. We have the server logs. We even have your little handwritten note where you call me the Briar Ridge problem." Her smile faltered for half a second, then came back twice as bright. "He's unstable," she told the sheriff. I warned you this could happen. Look at him, he's bringing soldiers into a neighborhood. They're trying to intimidate us. What she didn't realize was that intimidation is loud. We were very, very quiet. The deputy behind the sheriff shifted his weight and reached for his cuffs like his training was 3 steps ahead of his brain. Davis stepped between us. Not close enough to touch, just close enough to matter. Deputy, just a heads up, he said, voice smooth. Any unnecessary contact is going to look real bad on video, considering we're unarmed and standing on a public sidewalk. State Code Section 12-7, photography and recording of public officials during duty. You're being live-streamed, sir. The deputy froze like someone had unplugged him. The sheriff finally exhaled. You got documentation? He asked me. I nodded, reached into my bag slow and deliberate like I'd practiced it 100 times, and handed him a folder and a flash drive. Deed, mortgage records, deployment orders, the original HOA charter, your famous bylaw 22B, and a little highlight reel of Pam saying I checked out of this neighborhood long before I packed my bags. That one's a crowd favorite. Bowen, standing across the street, tapped his earpiece and gave me a thumbs up. The live stream was rolling, private link for now, but 1 button away from public. Pam snorted. Just some edited video his friends cooked up. Sheriff, you can't let him weaponize social media against a lawful board. What board? A voice croaked behind her. Everyone turned. Mrs. Delaney, white hair, cane, the kind of neighbor who knows every dog by name and every secret by accident, was making her way down the sidewalk. I was at the last real board meeting in March, she said, and I sure don't remember voting on stealing a soldier's house while he was overseas. Her words hung there, longer than anything I could have said. The sheriff shook his head, chewed on that for a second, then handed the folder to his deputy. Verify what you can, he muttered. And ma'am, he turned to Pam, until this is cleared up, this is a civil dispute. Unless you've got proof of threats or violence, I'm not removing anybody from a public street. You're all useless, she snapped. You have no idea who you're dealing with. She stalked back toward my yard, jabbing a finger at me. You think your little platoon makes you untouchable? She hissed. I own this neighborhood. I manage these homes. You abandoned this place. I simply stepped in. You're trespassing now, I said gently. On camera, on my lawn, while you're under investigation. Keep talking. Bowen lifted his phone from the porch and grinned. Say hi to the internet, Pam. She spun around, face flushing, and stormed back to her SUV. For the first time, she looked less like a queen and more like someone who'd just realized the castle walls were made of cardboard. You'd think that would have been the turning point, right? Big confrontation, sheriff backing off, neighbor standing up, HOA queen rattled. Roll credits. But life doesn't wrap itself neatly, and villains don't stop just because you catch them lying in front of a cop. They just change tactics. That night, while I was finally starting to feel like maybe I'd taken some ground back, the next wave hit. Not with a knock on the door, this time it came in my email. Subject line: complaint received, code enforcement notice. Some charming little document accusing me of running unauthorized tactical training in a residential neighborhood. Allegations of simulated combat drills, weapons discharge, unsafe conditions. If the city took it seriously, they could condemn my property, slap me with fines, and give Pam exactly what she wanted. A legal reason to push us out again. Signature at the bottom. Filed on my behalf by a third-party legal assistant. And authorized by none other than Pamela Thorne, HOA president, from her lovely little holding cell. I'll be honest with you. That one almost broke me, not because I was scared of a code inspector, but because I saw the chain reaction in my head. Condemned property. Report to my command. Someone reading a file that made me look like I'd brought a war home with me. Words like conduct unbecoming and community risk floating around. My career, my name. All of it at the mercy of one woman who couldn't stand not being in control. So I made one more call. Not to the guys. To an old friend from JAG. A quiet man who never raised his voice but had ended more careers with a single memo than you'd believe. I need this dealt with, I told him. You mean buried? He asked. No, I said. I mean handled so clean that if anyone looks at it, it hurts them, not me. He chuckled softly. Send everything. And get your yard ready for inspection. The inspector showed up 2 days later. Tired eyes, clipboard, polo shirt. The human embodiment of I would rather be fishing. He walked the yard, watched Max, my service dog, run a basic command lane, noted the noise-dampening panels Bowen had helped install, the locked storage, the signed neighbor waivers we'd collected. You call this tactical training? He asked. I shrugged. I call it helping vets learn how to breathe again without jumping at every car door slam. But Pam calls it dangerous, he scribbled, frowned, and left without much of a word. 3 hours later, I got the report. Complaint dismissed. Submission flagged as retaliatory. The city opened an inquiry, not into me, but into the person who coaxed it through a back-channel law firm tied to a property investment group. That property investment group was owned by a man named Damian Ross. Nice suit, expensive shoes. Friendly in that way people are when everything in their life has always tilted in their favor. HOA treasurer, former real estate broker, and according to Bowen, a recurring name in a whole lot of property transfers that stank like week-old fish. Here's the thing that still gets me. My house wasn't the first. It wasn't even the fifth. We only learned that because the renters came back. Not Pam's new boy Tyler. He bailed as soon as he realized the stink he was standing in, but a couple named Jenna and Luis. Mid-30s, tired eyes, good posture, the kind of people who work hard and trust paperwork a little too much. They showed up with a tablet and a file folder. We're the ones who took the lease before Tyler, Jenna said quietly on my porch. We didn't know. She said the owner was gone, said it was foreclosed. She showed me the emails, clean headers, official logos, fake case numbers, all signed off by Pam, all citing abandoned property reassignment under 22B and community revitalization program. And they weren't the only ones. She'd done it to at least 9 other families. Most of the original owners, military, deployed in rehab or dead. I swear I felt something behind my ribs crack when I heard about the one whose widow had moved in with her parents after he was killed. 2 months later, Pam reclaimed the house under the same clause and rented it out under Damian's company. Tell me you got all of this, I said to Bowen later, my voice doing that quiet shaking thing I hate. Oh, I got more than this, he replied. HOA server backup, draft minutes, transfer signatures, Damian's company routing payments, IRS filings. They thought deleting emails was enough. They've never met a bored IT guy with moral outrage and free time. We built what the guys started calling the kill book, not because we were out to destroy lives for fun, but because this thing, if dropped in the right place, would end careers, businesses, reputations. It was 3 inches thick by the time we were done. Printouts, logs, sworn statements, financial chains, screenshots, everything. We didn't march down to City Hall screaming. We didn't threaten anybody. We just quietly mailed copies to the county DA, to the state housing authority, to a reporter one of the guys knew who specialized in boring corruption that ruins regular people. And then, for good measure, we sent one last copy. Certified signature required. Straight to Pam's townhouse. I wish you all could have seen her face when she opened that envelope. We were watching from 2 houses down, sitting in an old pickup like a couple of dads waiting for football practice to end. She opened the door in slippers, signed for the packet, flipped through 3 pages, and went pale like someone had unplugged her soul. That was the beginning of the end for her. The arrest didn't come overnight, but when they hit hard. Damian got walked out of his office in cuffs, trying really hard to look indignant instead of terrified. Pam got picked up on a violation of her pretrial conditions when they caught her snooping around another abandoned house with a locksmith and a stack of pre-filled lease forms. Court was ugly. Her lawyer quit halfway through. She tried to represent herself for a day and managed to insult the judge, the clerk, and 3 witnesses before she realized the system she'd gamed for years didn't care about her feelings. They dug into everything: false liens, targeted fines, doctored votes, racial targeting, and a pattern of going after service families who were gone long enough not to fight back in time. She got 8 years. Damian's case is still ongoing last I checked. HOA dissolved, assets redistributed. Every homeowner got a payout. My family walked back into a house with bruises on its history, but the deed in my hand said what I needed to hear. It's yours again. The funny thing is, the quiet was the hardest part. After all that noise, all that planning and fighting and holding myself together, Sitting on my own porch with a beer, watching Max snore under the steps, felt almost unreal. Ramos enrolled in school. Bowen took a contracting job. My son slowly started leaving his hoodie down inside the house. My wife finally slept through a night without waking up to check the locks. I thought that was the epilogue. Until I opened the mailbox one more time. There was an envelope. No return address, no stamp. The kind someone walks up and drops in by hand. Inside, one piece of paper, cheap and thin. No punctuation, no greeting. Just a sentence. Messy handwriting crawling across the page. You didn't win, you just got lucky. Taped to the back of it was a key. Old, rusted. The little plastic tag on it read, Unit 13. Now, here's the twist. My neighborhood doesn't have a Unit 13, never did. I checked plans, old maps, permits. Nothing. Until I dug deeper, county level deeper, and found an old blueprint from when the subdivision was just an idea on paper. Back then there was a storm shelter planned. Underground, labeled as, Unit 13. Years later, it was removed from the design due to cost. On paper, anyway, it took me and Ramos half a day of walking property lines, reading old coordinates, and probably trespassing on 2 yards by accident before we found it. A metal hatch half swallowed by dirt and roots behind what used to be the model home lot. The key fit like it had been waiting. The air inside smelled like mold, paper, and bad decisions. 4 plastic crates, a rotted desk, and 1 shoebox with black marker on the lid. Board files, do not destroy. Inside, everything. Voter lists with names crossed out and handwritten replacements. Cash logs, side deals. Photos of every problem house, including mine, circled in red. And emails, printed out. All of them. Some with Pam's name, some with Damien's. And a few with signatures that belonged to people who'd moved on to higher offices since then. Do I know who left that key in my mailbox? No, maybe Pam dropped it before she went away. Maybe someone inside the system got tired of covering for them. Maybe it was just one person's guilty conscience finally choking them. What I do know is this. I packed that shoebox back up, drove straight to the state attorney's office, slid it across the counter. Last piece, I said. You're going to want to look closely at everyone who signed those papers. So yeah, I got my house back. Pam's in prison. Damien's in court. The HOA is gone, replaced by something smaller and a lot less cocky. My neighbors aren't afraid of clipboards anymore. But I still keep that original bylaw printout in a drawer by the door as a reminder, because there are 1,000 ways to serve your country. Sometimes it's with a rifle and a uniform on the other side of the world. Sometimes it's standing on your front lawn with a folder and a camera, looking a bully in the eye and telling them, no, not this house, not this time, and now I'm curious what you think. If you were in my shoes, coming home to strangers in your bed, an HOA president who treats your service like a loophole, and a system quietly set up to strip houses from people who can't fight back, how far would you go? Did I cross a line bringing my old platoon into it? Or was that the only language people like this understand? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me who you think was more dangerous here. The clipboard queen in the visor, the quiet treasurer pulling strings for profit, or the system that let them play God with other people's homes. And if you've ever had a run-in with an HOA or a petty little tyrant hiding behind rules, I want to hear that too. Because stories like this only change anything if we actually talk about them.